The FIA has just opened an internal investigation into Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari after new Qatar race data revealed behavior so extreme that officials now believe the car may have been operating outside its declared aerodynamic model. Shocking telemetry shows a millimetric disconnection between the floor and the rear suspension of the SF25, creating instability levels that Hamilton described as a fight you would not believe throughout the race. Multiple radio messages from Hamilton confirm that the car was not only slow but physically unpredictable, with violent snapping on exit and severe bouncing under braking that matched the worst moments of the porpoising era. Before we reveal the full technical findings and how this investigation could impact Hamilton's final race of the season, make sure you subscribe because Ferrari's internal crisis is about to reach its most critical point. Ferrari entered the Qatar Grand Prix already aware that the SF25 was struggling with correlation problems, but what happened on Sunday exposed a far deeper structural failure. Hamilton started from 17th position after Ferrari broke parc ferme to rebuild the setup, yet even with those changes the car behaved as if it existed outside its own aerodynamic map. From the first laps, he reported instability so severe that he could not lean on the car in medium or high-speed corners. This was not a balance issue. It was a sign of an aerodynamic platform losing coherence every time load increased. The FIA's attention was captured instantly when the first data packages showed irregularities in the rear suspension movement. These micro-oscillations could only be produced if the floor and the suspension were failing to interact as designed. That failure created sudden downforce losses in sectors 2 and 3, giving Hamilton understeer on entry and snapping oversteer on exit. It mirrored the porpoising crisis of 2022, but appeared during braking zones rather than straights, particularly in the approach to turn 10, where Hamilton described uncontrolled bouncing. The early safety car offered no rescue because the underlying problem was structural. Hamilton lacked mechanical grip on the hards and struggled to defend even against Alpine and Williams. Ferrari's data showed the SF25 running between 0.8 and 1 second and 0.2 slower per lap than the front group, a deficit that confirmed the car was fundamentally outside the competitive window. The radio message in which Hamilton said the rear was going everywhere revealed that he was fighting instability rather than racing. Mid-race communication made the scale of the crisis unmistakable. Hamilton explained that the changes Ferrari made had somehow made the instability worse, an admission that the parc ferme brake did not correct the structural weakness. The SF25 reacted differently on each lap, leaving Hamilton unable to predict behavior at corner entry. When he said that the car had no speed at any stage, he was not expressing frustration, but reporting a mechanical truth. The car simply lacked the tools required to compete. Charles Leclerc's performance reinforced the severity of the problem. Even with a cleaner race and fewer overtakes, he salvaged only 10th place and repeatedly warned the team that the car had zero grip. His explosive complaint that the situation was embarrassing reflected the shared conclusion of both drivers. Ferrari were being overtaken on pure pace by midfield teams, confirming that this was not a strategic failure, but a structural collapse of the SF25's design coherence. Team principal Fred Vasseur attempted to shield the drivers by accepting institutional responsibility. He admitted publicly that Ferrari underestimated the consequences of stopping development in April to focus on the 2026 project. He also criticized the public broadcast of selective radio messages, insisting that Hamilton and Leclerc were united in their assessment of the car. According to Vasseur, the SF25 is fundamentally unstable and Ferrari are now forced to contain a problem they can no longer solve. This series of failures explains why the FIA has initiated an internal investigation. The governing body wants to understand why aerodynamic load fluctuated at levels outside Ferrari's declared model, and why these fluctuations created instability serious enough for Hamilton to lose confidence in basic control. This is not about illegality. It is about safety. Qatar confirmed that Hamilton was driving a machine that behaved unpredictably under high load, forcing Ferrari into survival mode rather than competition. 12th place was not a bad performance. It was the only outcome possible for a car experiencing structural aerodynamic failure. Ferrari's core problem in Qatar began long before the lights went out. From the first meaningful laps on Sunday, the SF25 behaved like a machine whose aerodynamic and mechanical foundations were no longer aligned. Hamilton reported immediately that the rear of the car was unstable in a way he had never experienced with Ferrari. The telemetry confirmed that load distribution between the floor and the rear suspension was shifting unpredictably with every change in speed. When a Formula One car loses aerodynamic coherence, every corner becomes a question rather than a calculation. Hamilton entered the race already knowing the car beneath him could not be trusted. The second layer of the problem appeared through the braking zones, where the SF-25 showed sudden oscillations that resembled the worst moments of the porpoising era. Hamilton described bouncing so severe under braking at turn 10 that he could not commit to a consistent reference point. This was not simply the result of track bumps or tire limitations. The FIA identified micro-oscillations within the rear suspension that suggested the aerodynamic load was not stabilizing across the platform. This meant the car was not providing Hamilton with the necessary downforce to secure the rear axle under heavy deceleration. A third component of the crisis came from Ferrari's decision to brake park firm. This step is taken only when the car's raceability is in serious doubt. Ferrari rebuilt part of Hamilton's setup overnight, but the changes functioned like emergency adjustments rather than structured development. The goal was not to improve performance, but to restore basic stability. Yet Hamilton reported immediately after the start that the changes had made the car even more unpredictable. This confirmed that the problem did not originate in the setup itself. It originated in the structural interaction between the aerodynamic platform and the mechanical grip. The fourth and most visible part of the problem was the magnitude of Ferrari's deficit. Hamilton lacked the pace to fight even against teams usually positioned in the midfield. He was losing close to a full second per lap to the leaders, a gap that cannot be explained by tire temperature or traffic management. This deficit reflects a car whose aerodynamic efficiency has collapsed. The SF-25 lacked the grip in medium speed corners, lacked traction in slow zones, and lacked straight-line stability to defend from overtakes. Hamilton found himself in a machinery deficit that no driver could overcome. A fifth layer of the problem concerned tire management. Because the SF-25 was sliding on entry and snapping on exit, the tires overheated as Hamilton attempted to correct the instability. Engineers tried to protect them by altering differential behavior and adjusting energy deployment, but the tires continued to warm outside their ideal window. When tires enter this zone repeatedly throughout a stint, grip fades and degradation accelerates. This created a vicious cycle where Hamilton had to slow down to preserve the tires, yet the car still demanded constant corrections that damaged them further. A sixth dimension of the problem was the emotional toll on Hamilton himself. His radio messages revealed not anger, but deep frustration. When he said the rear was going everywhere, he was describing a car whose aerodynamic platform was collapsing at different points of the circuit. When he said the car had no speed, he was not criticizing Ferrari, but acknowledging a mechanical truth. Top-level drivers rely on predictable feedback, and when that foundation collapses, even basic maneuvers become difficult. Qatar forced Hamilton into a role he has rarely experienced in his career. He was surviving, not racing. The final layer of the problem is what directly triggered the FIA investigation. The governing body examined telemetry that showed aerodynamic load fluctuations outside Ferrari's declared model. The FIA's responsibility is not only performance oversight, but safety assurance. Hamilton's instability at high speed and the unpredictable behavior under braking raised concerns that the car may not have been operating within acceptable structural parameters. Qatar did not expose a simple lack of pace. It exposed a breakdown in the SF-25's mechanical and aerodynamic cohesion, leaving Ferrari with a car that behaved unpredictably and a driver who could not rely on its fundamental stability. Ferrari's engineering team entered the Qatar race already aware that they were holding a machine with structural weaknesses, yet nothing prepared them for the severity of the instability Hamilton described on his first timed laps. The telemetry exposed an aerodynamic platform that was failing to behave within its expected range, with load transfer shifting unpredictably across the floor. Engineers found themselves operating without the comfort of reliable correlation. When the real-world numbers diverge from a model by that degree, the engineering team must abandon performance optimization and focus on preserving control, stability, and safety. They could only guide Hamilton through a car that was refusing to cooperate with physics. One of the earliest engineering challenges came through braking analysis. The car's violent oscillations under deceleration at turn 10 indicated that the rear suspension frequency was out of sync with aerodynamic load recovery. Engineers attempted to soften the progression of braking pressure by altering brake migration and adjusting the brake, by wire response curve. These changes were intended to reduce the sudden weight transfer that triggered the bouncing. However, the underlying instability persisted because the aerodynamic platform itself was not stabilizing. A driver can only adapt so much when the mechanical and aero systems refuse to align under heavy load. A deeper layer of pressure emerged from tire thermal behavior. The SF25 was forcing Hamilton into constant micro-corrections, generating heat spikes that destroyed the rear tire surface. Ferrari's engineers attempted to protect the tires through differential settings, mechanical instructions, and energy deployment adjustments, but these interventions only delayed the inevitable. A car that overheats its tires while running slower than expected is a car that has lost the fundamental harmony between mechanical grip and aerodynamic support. Engineers were trapped in a situation where every instruction became a temporary patch rather than a structural fix. Sector analysis added another dimension of complexity. The middle section of the circuit exposed the worst of the SF25's instability, with the long radius corners demanding a level of aerodynamic coherence the car could not produce. Engineers monitored wind speed, temperature variation, and track evolution, yet none of these environmental variables explained the violent shifts in load recorded across the floor. The data indicated that the instability originated from within the car's design, not the circuit. Hamilton relied heavily on detailed corner guidance from the pit wall, but even precise instructions could not counteract a platform behaving outside its aerodynamic window. Energy deployment also became a major engineering battleground. Because the SF25 lacked straight-line efficiency, Hamilton required more battery assistance to defend against cars that typically sit in the midfield. Engineers created revised harvesting points, lift instructions, and deployment cycles with the goal of stabilizing energy flow across the lap. Yet the instability forced Hamilton to adjust throttle input more frequently than planned, disrupting the energy harvesting rhythm. Engineers recalculated deployment strategies multiple times throughout the race just to keep the car competitive enough to avoid further positions lost.